Hello folks, I've come to this very green leafy location to talk to you about this very green car. It's the KIA Xceed plug-in hybrid 1.6 petrol combined with that plug-in hybrid technology. That gives you a 0 to 60 time of 10.6 seconds, 105 brake horsepower from the petrol engine and 35 from the electric powertrain. When those are combined, you've got 140 brake horsepower available to you. This one here that I've got is 35.5 grand. And that does carry a £7,000 premium over the petrol version. The Xceed itself starts at just 23 grand. That gets you a petrol version in the 2 trim level, which actually standard trim levels on it are not too bad at all. Now that plug-in technology allows you to use this car as a full EV for 30 miles or around the city. It's claimed 36.6 miles. It takes 2.5 hours to recharge the battery, but it's also got really good regen braking, so you can actually put a bit of power back into that battery without having to charge. So into the front cabin folks, as you can see, it's quite nice, quite smart, nothing flash about it. It's just very functional. Really nice quality materials though, although they're not luxurious in any way. You know, they're quite soft to touch. They feel really rugged. It feels like you could get in this car in 10 years to come and the interior would have held up very nicely. Certainly far better than some of the interior quality you'll find in a modern Ford, and dare I say, in some of the VWs. Nice big colour screen here. It does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but it's not wireless, so you do need to plug in. In this particular model, I don't have wireless charging or anything like that. Down here, I've got a USB-C and a USB-A, as well as a 12-volt socket. And then we've got a couple of cup holders under there. A traditional sort of gear selector, which I actually really like. I know in a lot of Kia Group cars, Hyundai Group cars, sorry, we have a little rotational dial kind of thing. Nothing wrong with that, works really well, but I do like a good old-fashioned shifter. You've got a button here for EV and hybrid EV modes. You've got a sport button, parking sensors and your cameras. This being 3 trim, we've got things like heated seats, heated steering wheel, hybrid analog dials with a little 4.5-inch colour information display there as well. We do have physical knobs and dials for the aircon, and they feel lovely actually, really well weighted. It's only plastic on the rim there, so it doesn't feel amazing under the finger, but the actual motion of that is quite satisfying. I am sad, very sad. The information display itself I'm very familiar with from Kias and Hyundais, and it's brilliant. I think it's one of the best on the market. It just is functional, does everything you want, it's not laggy, it's nice and bright, nice and clear, good resolution, so all in all, I'm quite happy with that. As for the steering wheel, very nice indeed. Good quality, I guess pleather, maybe leather. We've also got little thumb dials there for your main infotainment settings and things, and all the other functions you're really going to need at the tip of your thumb without feeling massively overcrowded. Once we're in the rear cabin folks, it continues the theme from the front really, which is nothing flash, nothing uber luxurious, but all feels very comfortable, all quite smart and all nice and functional. It's got a big armrest here with 2 cup holders in the middle. This middle seat could accommodate an adult. You could fit 3 people in the back here in reasonable comfort. We do have a USB-A socket down here for the rear passengers, as well as a couple of air vents. You've also got some fairly tight pockets in the back of the seats to put iPads or whatever the kids may have in here. Footroom under the seat could be a tad better, and although we've got those batteries to accommodate in here, there's still a decent amount of headroom. You could easily travel in here in comfort at over 6 foot, I would say. Likewise, you could also get 3 passengers across the back in relative comfort, certainly for a short journey. Folks, on paper, the boot space is a little bit of a disappointment. It's only 291 litres, which is 135 litres less than you get on the petrol version of the car. And that's because it's got to accommodate batteries and, of course, those electric motors. Having said that, I've done a weekly shop in this car and it accommodates everything really well. And I think that's largely thanks to the fact that it's a nice, big, wide opening. It's a really easy boot to use. I've certainly used larger boots that I feel like I can't fit as much into, if that makes any kind of sense at all. So although it is a negative point for the car, it's not the end of the world as you might think if you're looking at the numbers on paper. I have to say folks that apart from about 3 miles in full EV mode, so that I could talk about it in this review, The rest of the mileage I've put into the car has been in full hybrid mode. And like most hybrids, this car comes with a fairly hopeful MPG figure. I'm going to pop that up on the screen for you. I'm sure those numbers are absolutely achievable if you're doing lab tests and you're using it as an EV more than you are with petrol. But in the real world, I've done about 90 miles in this car so far. I've been in full hybrid mode for most of them, and I've done 60.4 mpg, which I don't think is too bad. And as for that hybrid mode, it works really, really well. As long as you've got charge in your battery, when you start up, you're generally in EV. At lower speeds, you'll be in EV, and the petrol engine just cuts in when it needs to. And obviously, if you're going for it, the petrol engine and the electric motor will come into effect to give you as much power as possible. So folks, I've just taken off here in full EV mode, and I don't know if you can hear, but there's a bit of rumble from the tyres, but not much else. And I'm then just going to allow that petrol engine to kick in. Now, the only reason I knew the petrol engine had kicked in is that a couple of seconds after I put my foot down, and I really put my foot down, I just heard the revs creeping up, and there were previously no revs. It's that well done. It is seamless. Another point to note with this car is that they've made the suspension slightly softer than you get in the petrol versions of the car. And that's really just to accommodate the extra weight of the batteries. In actual fact, it's perfectly weighted. It doesn't feel boaty. That's always the worry, is that they soften the suspension because it's a heavier car and the thing becomes a little bit of a tugboat. This doesn't at all. It feels really nice on the bends. It's not the kind of car you're going to drive in a sporty fashion, let's face it. So in the normal everyday use, you're going to use this car for going to the shops, you're going to do your commute in it, you might do an occasional long run in it, but you're not going to be taking this kind of car around the twisty back roads, really, are you? And it suits its purpose absolutely brilliantly. The suspension on this car is a triumph. It's really nicely done. Also, the steering's great. It feels nice and positive, nice and direct, not at all vague. As for the XCeed itself, it's a brilliant car and should certainly be in your thoughts. You should certainly go and test drive one if you're in the market for this sort of mid-size hatchback, slightly jacked up. You've got to take a look at one because it deserves to be part of the conversation. In some respects, it deserves to be the conversation. For me, the only question left is, should I go for the plug-in hybrid or not? And I have to say, for my personal use, I wouldn't. I'd go for the petrol car. It's £7,000 cheaper, and depending on your use case and how you get your power, your electricity, whether you've got solar panels or you've still got some kind of amazing tariff somehow, you're going to struggle to pay back that £7,000 unless you're keeping hold of the car for 20 years or something. I think most people, might save 200 quid a year by having the plug-in hybrid. They might save 300 quid a year by having the plug-in hybrid. It takes a long time for 200 or 300 quid a year to turn into 7 grand, folks. And that, for me, makes me think, meh. Obviously, you don't expect it to be cheap because you've got a full petrol car with everything that goes with that. Plus, you've got sort of an EV thrown on top. So, although you don't have tons and tons of batteries, just the technology that is in this car is blooming expensive. So there's always going to be a premium. It's just whether that premium makes sense to you or not. And that's a question that really only you can answer. I hope you've enjoyed this review, folks. Please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so. And please tell a friend. See you on the next one.